In the meantime, I want to bring in former Army Ranger and Democratic Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado. He's on the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees. It's good to have you here today. I know Congress is set to get briefed later today. More members of Congress, the Gang of Eight, had their briefing yesterday, and we played some of the rationale we've heard from this administration at the top for launching these strikes on Iran. Interestingly enough, Congress wasn't consulted before those strikes, but there was a formal letter notifying Congress of these Iranian strikes sent just yesterday. And I want to read part of it. This is what it says. Despite my administration's repeated efforts to achieve a diplomatic solution to Iran's malign behavior, the threat to the United States and its allies and partners became untenable. Goes on to say these strikes were undertaken to protect United States forces in the region, protect the United States homeland, advance vital United States national interests, including ensuring the free flow of maritime commerce through the Strait of Hormuz, and in collective self-defense of our regional allies, including Israel. Does any of this justify the strikes and now a war with Iran?
Anna, Donald Trump and his administration are making up the justification for this conflict. This is exactly what a quagmire looks like. I sit on the Armed Services Committee, the Intelligence Committee, and I have seen no evidence, none, of an imminent threat, because it has to be an imminent threat for the president unilaterally to use the war power authority that he has under the Constitution to initiate offensive operations without Congress. So there's a lot of discussion about Congress not being consulted, notification requirements, a congressional vote. Here's why that's important. We spent 20 years, trillions of dollars, over 6,000 American lives in nation building and regime change efforts in the Middle East, all of which ended poorly. Americans are done with it. Working class folks who had to finance this, fight these wars, bear the burden of these conflicts are also done with it. The accountability mechanism is broken in our government. So Congress needs to reinsert itself into this debate, take control of its war powers so that we can return accountability to the American people, because it's the American people that have to decide whether or not this is in their interest.
And of course, we're already seeing American casualties as a result of the actions taken. I want to come back to what we heard from Secretary Rubio, who spelled out an interesting explanation for why they believe there was an imminent reason to attack Iran. And he laid it on Israel, essentially saying Israel was going to launch an attack. If that happened, Iran would have attacked the U.S. And he said that it was the Trump administration's assessment that then the U.S. would suffer higher casualties if they didn't preemptively go after Iran. What do you make of that?
Well, the real justification for this, please stand up. Because one moment it's regime change, another moment it's some undefined, unverifiable imminent threat. Another moment it's somebody else who's going to start this war, so we need to start it before they do. It is changing by the hour and by the person, depending upon who you talk to. And it's madness. It's madness. We now have multiple countries being hit. This is spreading throughout the region. Gas prices are up. The stock market is plunging. American service members are being killed. We have 50,000 servicemen and women from the United States in this region who are sitting in bunkers, being bombarded with drones and missiles. We don't know, I don't know, sitting here today, whether or not we have the munitions and the capability to protect them in the weeks and months ahead. It is madness, which is exactly why Donald Trump is unfit to be in this position to do this, right? He is trying to project power. He's making decisions without consulting people, making decisions without a plan. Americans, our troops deserve far better than this.
Meantime, we heard Speaker Johnson defend the president's actions. It doesn't sound like the president's party is as concerned as Democrats are. So you have this war powers resolution vote set for later this week. Are you facing the same headwinds that lawmakers saw when there was the same kind of vote regarding Venezuela?
We are going to force a vote, and I'm going to be a part of that because it is really important that we take names. We force people to go on record to say, who are they going to be behind here? Are they just going to be a toady and a yes man or yes woman for this president and his reckless runaway conflict right now, or are they actually going to stand by their constituents? So, yes, forcing a vote is really important, but I am not holding my breath that the Republican Party, as it currently exists within Congress, is going to stand up for the Constitution, do their job, which is to take votes and to take control of war powers and to defend working class Americans and their constituents. They unfortunately have shown themselves all too willing to just line up behind Donald Trump and do whatever he asks them to do.
Meantime, the bombs, the missiles, they keep flying. This is still happening. CENTCOM says they've struck over 1,200 targets. They listed more than 24 different types of military assets that are being used in this fight. I just wonder, because we heard from Secretary Hegseth, we're not going to do nation building. This is going to be a full frontal sort of air attack. We're going to destroy all of Iran's military capabilities. But can they do that? Can they just destroy and then leave the destruction and walk away? How does that work?
Well, I think here's the broader challenge as I see it. The administration has said, Iran is a terror regime. They're a rogue regime. They are awful. That is true. Actually, I served in Iraq, and I saw Iranian proxies use roadside bombs, go after American soldiers. They are the largest state sponsor of terror in the world. That is true. Saddam Hussein was also bad. The Taliban were also bad. So the analysis begins with whether somebody is bad and a threat. It doesn't end with that, because the next steps in the analysis is, what do we do about it? Do we use the military? Should we commit ourselves to a war? Should we get bogged down for another 20 years? Should we sacrifice tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars, or in the case of Iraq and Afghanistan, trillions of dollars to do this? What's happening now is actually costing tens of billions of dollars. Now, at the same time as Americans can't afford health care, can't afford their homes, can't afford gas now, can't afford their groceries, there are opportunity costs to all of this. And right now, this administration and the people around Donald Trump are simply not doing the analysis and asking the tough questions, which means Congress must, and I will continue to.
Congressman Jason Crow, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Good to have you on set.